duration is, but it's fairly quick. So it's weird, eh? Because there you are, and you were there 2 years ago, but none of your constituent elements are the same. So how is it that you can be the same? Now, the physicist Schrodinger, of the Schrodinger's cat fame, solved that by claiming that you were a dissipative structure. It's a very interesting way. That's what he thought life was, dissipative structures. A dissipative structure is the same as a, you know, when you pull up the you call that at the bottom of the sink? Stopper. I think so, stopper. If your sink is full of water and you pull up the stopper, you know you get a whirlpool, right? And all the water spins as it goes down the drain hole. And you'll notice that whirlpool looks sort of the same across time, even though obviously the water molecules that make it up are different. He called that a dissipative structure. It was a pattern that maintained itself in spite of the movement of matter through it. And that's what you are, by the way. So it requires energy to keep a dissipative structure intact. But you take in energy, so thanks to the sun. What do you mean by chance? Why do you have moral concerns, and what does it mean that you have moral concerns, that you have ideas about how people should behave and how they shouldn't behave, and you have a very deep understanding of that, and it's characteristic of all human beings and many animals. So where does that come from, and is it a valid form of knowledge? What are children doing when they're playing? What are people doing when they're dreaming? And what's the significance of the fact that you can imitate other people? Now, I'll start with the last one briefly. You know, you might think that one of the things that really distinguishes us from other creatures, animals, is the fact that we have a thumb. And that's a big one. We've got very good functional thumbs, and hooray for that. And we stand up on 2 feet, so we get a chance to use our thumbs and hands to carry things around and to break things and to take them apart and to swing sticks and so on. But there are other animals who can do that to a limited degree. And then there's our ability to talk. That's a major one. But one of the other things that really differentiates people from other animals is, you know, you hear monkey see, monkey do, right? Well, that's wrong. Monkey see, that's the end of that. Monkeys really can't imitate one another, and they certainly can't imitate any even randomly generated novel behavior that another monkey produces. Think about it this way. You know, you hear these claims that chimpanzees have culture. It's like, well, no, they don't, not really. And the reason for that, it's easy to figure out that they don't have culture. I mean, let's say chimps have been around, roughly speaking, for 15 million years, which is not a bad estimate because we diverged from them about 7 million years ago, and the evidence is pretty clear that the thing that we diverged from looked a lot more like a chimp than it looked like us. So like we've been booting it ahead madly, developing like mad, and the chimps have been laying back and eating leaves. You know, so do they have a culture? Well, they've had 15 million years. You know, they haven't even built a hut yet. And the reason I'm telling you that is because if you're a culture-generated creature, and you only manage, say, one discovery every 100 years between all of you, if you have 15 million years to get your act together, that's a lot of 100-year segments. And so even if the chimpanzee was building culture at the rate of 0.0001% a year, if you compound that over 15 million years, you have the Empire State Building. And there aren't Empire State Buildings that chimpanzees are living in, and so therefore they don't have culture. Now, they might be able to recognize their peers in the dominance hierarchy. They can do that. And they can use, maybe they can use simple tools. But the tools they use seem to be dependent on the environment that they inhabit. You know, because some people say, well, some chimps use one tool and some chimps use another. But, you know, if you're going to live in a rocky place, then you might use rocks. And if you're going to live in a place that has sticks, you might use sticks. But that's not because you're different. It's because the environment's different. So, anyways, chimps can't imitate one another very much. But humans, man, we're ridiculous. Like, we're so imitative, it's absolutely crazy. You know, and that's so cool because what it means is that once you get a pattern of behavior, you whip up a new pattern of behavior, I can watch you and I can just instantiate it in my own body, you know, maybe a bit awkwardly to begin with, although maybe sometimes better than you can, and bang, I've got that. And so we're always looking around at each other, seeing what we're up to, and as soon as we see someone who's up to something interesting, then we can do the same thing. And children do that because they imitate, right? But they're even better at it, man. they generalize across instances of imitation. So for example, remember when you're a kid, and you're playing, maybe you're playing house, and you're the mom, or maybe you're, I don't know, maybe you're the house cat, because children will certainly do that. And so let's say the child is being the house cat, so he or she is down on, all fours, zooming around like a cat, maybe meowing and, rubbing up against their mother's leg and looking for a milk in the bowl. And they're not exactly imitating their cat. Because if they were exactly imitating their cat, they would be moving exactly the same way the cat moved. But no, they're not. What they're doing is they've observed the cat across a wide variety of environments. They've abstracted what constitutes generalized cat behavior from all of those instances, and then they can instantiate the spirit of the cat, which is sort of the movements that make up catness. And then you, because you're so smart, you can watch them zooming around on the ground, and despite the fact that they don't have a tail or ears or fur, you're going to figure out pretty quick that that is now a cat. And children do the same thing with their parents. Like if they're playing house and they imitate their father, they may, to some degree, try to imitate the sound of his voice and maybe even use a couple of his favorite phrases. But basically what they're doing is trying to act like a father rather than imitating their father. So it's like, it's meta-imitation, right? So I watch you, I watch you, I watch you, I watch you. There's commonalities across all those instances. I extract the commonalities, I embody it, and then when I play, that's what I'm doing. I'm figuring out how to embody the commonalities across multiple exposures. And you're doing that when you're like 3. You're so smart. And then even if you're asleep, you're doing it, because you're doing it in your dreams. And so human beings do that, no other animals do. So when you're thinking about the ways that we're weird, you want to put imitation way up there on the list, because you can, think about deaf people, like congenitally deaf people. They don't have much access to language. Say they don't learn sign language, because that used to happen in the past. It's like they can still wander around in the world and fit in. Well, why? Well, because they're so good at imitating, They get all the nonverbal stuff, and that's a lot. So language is, great and all that. Language actually enables you to imitate across space and time. That's what it's for. Because, maybe you whip up a new action, and then you write it down in words, and then you send it to someone, and those are instructions, by the way, because that's what instructions are. You send that to someone, and then they read your code for behavior, and then they act it out. And so language enables you to move imitation across space and time. And that's a really good way of conceptualizing language, because it's a Piagetian way, because sometimes we might think that language is there to describe the world, in a scientific sense. George Kelly kind of thinks that human beings are sort of like natural scientists. But natural scientists are much more concerned with what is than with how to act. So Kelly's wrong. What human beings are more like is natural engineers. Because we're always, zooming around trying to figure out how to fiddle with things, much more than what they are. And as I mentioned to you earlier, a pragmatist would say, well, it's an artificial distinction, because things are what they are when you fiddle with them. That's in fact what they are. So that's pretty smart.